الله أكبر الله أكبر.
And try to find some solutions and sometimes just basically bring the solutions that are already existing, because I'm not claiming that it's all doom and gloom and we will start from point zero because everything, we don't know what. No, there are many things that we already know what to do, but just we will talk about it, inshallah, so that we will reinforce how we feel about the solutions that are already in place. I want also to thank the many young people and not so young who really communicated with me by email, by messaging, and gave me their opinions, gave me their suggestions. And from all of those suggestions, I'm going to select a comment that is really very relevant, because I want to make sure that no one who is present might think that I am portraying the parents as those who are propagating unpleasant ways of lives, and the children are the victims. I don't want that to be the message that the young people again say, see, and then they'll go to their parents and we told you all along that you were. No. I'm not saying that, because parents, in trying to give the children the baton, as I said, to continue the relay race, they are actually doing a very difficult job, not only in propagating Islamic values, but in parenting. Parenting in general is not easy. Inshallah, one day, all the young people will become parents, and they will realize, albeit a little bit late, that their parents really did the right thing for them. So this is what I wanted to stress, that it is not victim and oppressor. No. We are in this together, parents and children. Now, the title, for those who really checked what challenge are we going to talk about today, is what I mentioned last week to the one who made the suggestion that this should be number one, the challenge, and that is how do we separate culture from religion? Or do we need to separate culture from religion? Or can culture be separated from religion? This is what we want to talk about, because it's a challenge. Not only now, and let me say it right from the outset, it is not only a challenge for the young people, but it's a challenge for all of us. Although there's an added element for this challenge, in that most of us, the parents, were born, there are many parents who were born here, okay, but most of us were born in continents like Africa and Asia, where our great-grandparents went through what we are going through in America today. They established a kind of mating between culture and religion, and we grew into it. We did not ourselves, the parents, witness the kind of struggle that our great-grandparents went through, if they went through a struggle, because Islam came in the 7th century, in Asia and in Africa, where already culture was established, and it just went there to color this culture mix with it, with people, but it wasn't, much of a problem. Whereas, for us, the parents here in North America, we are still first, now starting to be second generation. Very few went into third generation of Muslims as trying to establish a culture in America which is Islamic culture. And I don't know if I am justified in using the word Islamic culture. Is there such a thing as Islamic culture? Let me just say it on the outset. No, there isn't. There isn't. Islam is a religion, and there is a Pakistani culture, there is an Indian culture, and even when we talk about Pakistani culture, we know that it used to be Indian culture. But then, over about, almost 100 years, it became a Pakistani culture that is different. And wait a minute, is there such a thing as an Indian culture? No, there isn't. There's a Southern Indian culture. There is a Punjabi culture. There is, even in Canada, there is a British Columbian culture. There is a Quebecois culture. There is a maritime culture. There is, culture varies without us noticing, only to discover once we jump from one culture into another that we get a shock. The same as when you take something like this and throw it into water, you see a splash that we call culture shock. I experienced that when I arrived in this country about 100 years ago, and yeah, you're supposed to smile. Yes, it's okay to smile. Yes, you have a nice smile. Why were you concealing it? He was doing this. Okay, now we have to realize that culture is something that we develop over time in such a way that you cannot tell that now I'm moving from this part of the culture. Tomorrow I will develop another phase of the culture. You just don't feel it. And here I would like to tell you a story. And those who have heard me before, they know that I love to tell stories. Okay? And some of you heard this story before, but I want to repeat it in case there are some who don't know, because it explains how cultures develop. An experiment was done where, and it's, to me, it's whether somebody really thought about it or somebody did it, I don't know, but it is just the meaning, even though the meaning is for those who love animals, and I'm one of them, it may sound a little bit, it's cruel. Okay, someone did an experiment whereby he brought a frog and put it in a jar of just room temperature water. And the frog didn't like to be contained in such a small environment. Immediately the frog jumped out of the jar. Repeated that, put the frog, the frog just, jumped out. Now, the experiment was modified in such a way that the frog was given a bigger environment to be comfortable in, and then, heat was subjected or, placed under that jar. And the water that was comfortable in temperature to the frog slowly started to heat up. The water started to heat up. The frog did not feel the change. And the frog, was comfortable, started to feel the heat, but the frog did not attempt to jump out because it was a gradual change in temperature. until the heat became really almost deadly, but still the frog did not move, because the frog developed that sense that I'm tolerating this. I'm not going to jump until the frog died. And what I am mentioning from this to the older people and to the young people, that quite often we start to do certain things, and because we are doing them slowly and all the time, we start to be used to them. You know, when people start to talk about a man and a man getting married to each other, or a woman and a woman getting married to each other, and we have been hearing it for quite some time, we get used to it. So now when people talk about it, we do not have the same reaction that we had when we first heard about it. I still remember that when we first heard about it, we were shaking. We talked about it for about 2 months, and then a little bit less, and a little bit less, until we stopped talking about it. Who is now putting that on the list of priorities? Who is talking about it? Nobody. Does that make it right? No. But our culture became such that we are used to it. Now, when I first arrived in Canada, I know that I felt very uncomfortable walking at the intersection of Dundas and Richmond and seeing girls in halter tops and in shorts. I couldn't imagine that this is something which is just fine. Now, and I'm not pointing fingers at any one of our girls or boys, just trying to tell them that this is wrong, and the answer will come right jumping at you, and they'll say, Baba, why is it wrong? They're comfortable like this. Why? You know why they are saying that? Because they go to school and, my kids say that we can't imagine if you are given the job of a principal for one day only, what you will do. I know what I'm going to do, but that's why they will not put me as a principal. Now, many things happen. I remember where I came from, where I was born, when we will see the principal just, moving, and his head is shown through the doors leading to the yard of the school, as if there is a wave of silence that everybody stops talking. Because the principal they stop talking. Not only that, no, stop talking, because, Ustaz Abdul Ghani, I still remember his name, Abdul Ghani Attar. Because when he showed with his, commanding, presence, that was the culture. Now, is it right? No, it's not right. But that was the culture. Or is it right for the principal, to just see certain images of what we consider do not mix with Islam, and we say, that's okay. Now, at this stage, I made a list, just before coming, and I want you, don't answer, unless you feel strongly, because, each of those things on my list, inshallah, a time will come and we will talk about it. Now, I'm going to mention certain things that even older people are not so sure. Are they part of Islamic faith, Islamic principles, or are they cultural practices? So I mentioned, number one, not accepting photographs to be taken of us. Not, no pictures. Just think about it. Is this cultural or is it part of our Islamic teachings? Number two, media have been talking about Islam equals honor killing. There are certain regions of the world where, and please, from now on for communication purposes, I am not going to identify any country as an Islamic country. There's no such thing. But I will say, majority Muslim countries. Meaning that countries where the majority of people are Muslim. Or they belong to the Islamic faith. Whether they really behave as Muslims, it's not what I'm talking. Majority Muslim countries. There are majority Muslim countries where if, let's say, one's sister does something, it is expected that her brother, her father, her, they call it honor. Is this, and media here, they talk. Now, among the problems of Islam is honor killing. Really? Is it? Number three. I don't want anybody to scream back at me, but I'll mention it, it's on my list. Because you say, well, you need to know whether it's Islamic or not. But I'm mentioning it because really, we need to understand where it's coming from. Niqab and hijab. Is it niqab? Is it hijab? Is it optional to be niqab or hijab? Is it none of them? Is it cultural that in Saudi Arabia they wear it as such, in Pakistan they wear it like this, in Turkey they wear it like this, in Morocco they wear it like this? In the Khalij, for example, they may expose part of the hair and that the rest is covered. Is this the proper hijab? Is hijab cultural or is it? Let's not talk. I know that my brother will give me a lecture once I finish about this, but if you see him all over me, I need you to help me. I love my brother and my sister and my wife now because she's sitting beside you. She said, "Why didn't you say sister and say wife?" Okay. Now, number 4, women driving cars. Is it Islamic or is it cultural? Now, testimony of a woman is half the weight of the testimony of a man. Is it cultural or is it really part of Islam? Now, again, immediately after that, a woman gets half the inheritance of a man. Now, women should, and listen to this, should have a separate section in the masjid where they cannot be seen, usually in the basement, or on a mezzanine, or a big divider has to be there. They need to have a separate entrance. Now, is this what Islam teaches? Is this what the Prophet did at his masjid and said, this is what Islam, already I don't want you to start saying, now we know the answer. No, I'm mentioning this. Is it Islamic or is it cultural? Now, is my beard Islamic or cultural? We know that At the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Islam came into a community where everyone had a beard. Now, did the Prophet ﷺ say that the beard now is Islamic, or is it still cultural? Wearing a turban or wearing a kufi or wearing is it Islamic? Oops, I violated today Islamic principles. Is it cultural? Now, is reciting Quran when someone dies Islamic or cultural? Do we have to recite Quran when someone dies? Do we have to put Quran on loudspeakers or put it in the background when someone dies? Because this is what we've been seeing everybody doing. So is it Islamic or is it cultural? Is learning Arabic an Islamic teaching, or can we learn our deen without knowing Arabic? I know many parents will say, see, I told you. Okay. No, this is a list that I made that I want us to think about, because it's a challenge. Now, it is often said, and this is what makes things complicated, it is often said Islam is not a religion. Islam is a way of life. Wait a minute. If Islam is a way of life, then how can you talk about separating culture from religion? At this stage in my presentation, I want to say, I am not an advocate or a believer that culture needs to be separated from religion. So what are we talking about? What I really would like to say now in summary before I continue is that Islam, different from any other, for the time being, let's use the word religion, different from any other religion known to humanity. And you will say, but isn't Islam the religion of humanity from beginning? Yes, it is. But people modified it, added, did this, and they called it by different names and whatever they did. The pure Islam that was finalized by our beloved mentor, messenger, seal of prophets, Muhammad ﷺ, is a way of life different in what way? By establishing dynamism as the characteristic of our deen. Our deen is not a static, you say, this is it. Very strict. You cannot know. There are two levels of diversity that are allowed, or not allowed. They are part of it. Two levels. Number one, and please, this will change the way we look at our deen. And I'm not saying here, oh, are you changing? No. But we really need to, and this is the purpose of this gathering, look at our deen as a dynamic way of life at two levels. The first level is not for us. It's for scholars. It's called interpretational diversity. When Umar and Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with them, interpreted certain ayat of the Quran differently, no one called one or the other as diverting from it. It was allowed. Otherwise, let me say it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to understand that we need to wash our feet in wudu instead of what At-Tabari, one of the scholars who interpreted the Quran, said, no, it is just wiping, as he understood the ayah, that you wipe. Others said, no, you wash. No, you wipe, you wash. You know what? Our deen is such that for scholars, there is the level of interpretational diversity, because scholars know the occasion of revelation. They know why it was revealed, and they learned it by what is called isnad, meaning a chain of propagation. If I am not a scholar of hadith who does not know that this hadith came from, oops, there is a broken link in the chain. I don't know that. So I will use this hadith as a proof. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. This is the hadith. But then we talk to scholars of hadith, say, don't fight. There is something here. So how do we learn our deen then? By referring anything which we will, towards the end I will say, how can we really solve this dilemma of culture versus religion or versus Islamic faith? We really need to have a trusted source of scholarship who can, with sincerity and honesty, go back to another level, who may depend on another level, until we reach a scholarship that we cannot really doubt the strength of its basis, and then we will transmit it this way until it reaches us. But our duty, our responsibility, our Islam dictates that if I see Sister Sadia doing something differently than I'm doing it, I may ask her, say, Sister Sadia, why are you doing this? Because I this and I'm comfortable. Alhamdulillah. We stop propagating enmity against each other because this is part of our deen. And I repeat, had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so wished, He would have revealed a Quran about the slightest, minutest piece of difference, so that there will be absolutely no difference whatsoever. قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ الْبَحْرُ مِدَادًا لِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّي لَنَفِذَ الْبَحْرُ قَبْلَ أَنْ تَنْفَذَ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّي وَلَوْ جِئْنَا بِمِثْلِهِ مَدَدًا. If the ocean is turned into ink to really write all the words of Allah, that ink of the ocean will not be enough. So the Quran that we have is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. And in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about certain people who keep asking questions at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how old will we be in Jannah? What do you want? There are people who, till today, 33. No. You will be this. In Jannah, you will. Ma'alish, I know. Yesterday, my son-in-law said something which is so beautiful. We were talking as a family, about something. And he said, why do we have to worry what will happen in the grave? Let's do our job in this dunya and then leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was beautiful. That settles everything. It's like a student who is saying, I know that the exam is going to be deadly, and that half of the class is going to fail, and that why do you have to worry about that? Just to study to the best of your ability and leave the rest to the professor. If the professor is really, interested in, and we know that كتب ربكم على نفسه الرحمة. You know what's كتب? Allah decreed that He assigned to Himself, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He will be most merciful. He made it part of His who He is. So if it is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, why do you have to worry about, Adhab al-Qabr? And there are people who say, yes, there is Adhab. No, I watched on television, there was a workshop, there is Adhab. No, there is no Adhab. There is this, there is that. And here I would like to say, I still did not, I'm not deviating back to the first level, which is interpretational diversity. This is our theme. I know, you know, I've experienced it, you've experienced it, that it's not some, a big chunk of the dilemma of culture, religion, sects, this is that now we have social media, we have television, we have YouTube, we have this, and we are seeing people, we assume they are the ones who are the basis of scholarship, fighting with each other on television. And we say, if they are fighting, what did they leave for us? Let me say this, and a word of warning for old and young. There are people, and I'm not here pointing finger at anybody, who have been assigned the job of dramatic scholarship so that they can act a drama pretending that this is Islamic thought when their objective is to entertain people on television through these differences. So don't fall into the net of, but look at such a, back to have a source that you trust who can, take you by the hand, so to speak. And let that person depend on another and another until says, I'm comfortable now, and this is, and don't go, because the Quran says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, لا تسألوا عن أشياء إن تبد لكم تسؤكم. Don't start to ask questions about certain issues that the Quran did not point out, because if Allah would point to you, you may dislike that verdict. So don't ask so many questions. If Allah is telling us, subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't ask so many questions, it means be comfortable, ask that person if you are in doubt, and do what that person does. Because that person, and I say it every time I go for Hajj, the first thing I tell the people, the Hujjaj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed that I put myself in a position of responsibility. Any answer I give you to a question, anything I tell you, I assume full responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because in Hajj especially, more than anything, more than Salah, more than fasting, more than Zakat, Hajj has the most of interpretational differences of any act of worship. Because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not do Hajj until the 10th year of Hijrah, which is a few months before he died. A few months. Scholars estimate about 4 months. And during that Hajj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. Today, I have perfected your deen, completed your deen for you, and I accepted Islam as a way of life for you. Therefore, in Hajj, some people tell you, no, you've got to do these in order. You've got to go to Mecca first. You've got to do Rami Jamarat al-Kubra. You have to, just assign it. And I say, don't do fatwa shopping. There are many people who go around and ask for fatwa shopping. I know you can, testify to that. Okay, so therefore, interpretational diversity. And the second level is what we want to talk about, and that is cultural diversity. Cultural diversity. Can someone guess the ayah in the Quran that points to cultural diversity? It's in Surah number 49. Surah Al-Hujurat, compartments. Ayah number 13, which talks about cultural diversity. And this is for all of us. It's a reality, it's a fact of life. And after I mention the ayah, I'm going to say, how do we deal with this? We came today because we want to know how to deal with this challenge. How to separate. So now, we said, our deen, we are going to learn it from a source. Do not go to so many sources. Don't. And if you have assumed the scholarship diversity ability, you know how to sift through scholarship diversity, that's fine. That's why people go and seek Islamic scholarship, so that they can really maneuver. Okay, people ask me so many questions, and my first response, if it is something about fatwa, immediately I say, I am not a mufti. But alhamdulillah, I am able to maneuver through fatwas. That's all I can. I can take this fatwa and that fatwa and that fatwa, and I can understand where this came from, this came from, this came from, and I can make a recommendation. That's it. I cannot give a fatwa. Is mortgage halal or haram? I cannot tell you, but I can tell you, okay, that this fatwa is based on this fatwa based on this, and this fatwa based on that. And then I can tell you that there is one of 40 rules that the scholars of Sharia use. They just go through those 40 rules. Oh, yes, this one. So I'm going to, from this rule, I will go to this and to this. Therefore, my fatwa is this. That's what they do. And with time, they memorize how to go from those 40 to another maybe 100 and to another maybe 300. They just have that ability, and they tell you, you do this. And you know what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives those people, okay, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah gave them that authority. You know, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not want people of scholarship who have the solid base to give you the answer, He would have said, no, 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 no. Okay? Only Allah and His, because we know that in Surah An-Nisa, that if you disagree over certain things, then take it back to Allah and His Messenger. Okay? And here, the address is not to us. The address is for the people of scholarship. If you disagree, go back, because they know how to go back. We don't. We don't. Now, cultural diversity, O humankind, we have created you from one pair of a male and a female, Adam and Hawa, and we caused you to multiply unto nations and tribes, so that you may get to mix with each other. No, 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 this is not the right translation. Wait a minute. Quite often we really need not to have the literal translation, because there's a meaning around ta'aruf. You know, when I want to become familiar with the culture of Gaza, or the culture of Pakistan, or the culture, this is ta'aruf. This is, and immediately after that, look at this, the safeguard, how to deal with culture and Islamic pure rules of faith. Look at this. The warning is, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. In this is the answer. Verily, the most dignified and beloved to Allah, who really established all of this, is the one who is most careful how to learn that this is where Islam, you know, stops, and this is where culture starts. Can somebody give me an example from the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he declared that my Islamic knowledge stops here, and for this I am going to ask you, what shall I do? Can somebody... Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. We have a scholar here. Okay, exactly. You know, they wanted to plant seedlings of palm trees, and so they were so used to come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and ask him, how shall we do this? He said, I don't know. I don't know. You know better about the soil of Medina. You know more how deep to put the seedling. You know more. I don't. Islam does not talk about this. Okay. Another thing, Mawqat Badr, when one of do you know his name?
He knows where water went.
Okay. One of the close companions, when Rasulullah ﷺ established or was talking about how to build the camp in Badr, one of the companions said, "O Messenger of Allah, why are you doing this? Because I think if we put our camp there, we will have more access to water." And he said, "That makes sense. I'm going to do what you did." And during the campaign of Al-Ahzab, Salman al-Farisi came and he said, in Persia, we used to dig this and to stop the enemy and this. He said, let's do it. Okay, so there are certain things that Islam does not talk about. It's cultural. In Persia, which is the culture of Persia, that's how they do it. Okay, in Gaza, now they developed a culture of resistance that is not known to humanity. To fly a kite and be able to achieve. Nobody heard of that before. It's a culture. When you are put in a position, you have to develop. Now I'm coming to this. So now we are living in Canada. We want to know that the culture we are developing as Muslims in Canada, in the United States, and say in London, Ontario. How will we know that what we are going to do is Islamically acceptable and culturally comfortable? Did you hear this? Islamically acceptable and culturally comfortable. I'm seeing some of you getting a little bit tired. I'm looking at one of you who is really looking really tired, but then I'm not keeping my eyes on that person so that we can, okay. So everybody now, okay, is paying attention, okay, and this is what Brother Mir, helped me to say, yes, we will pay, but we will pay attention, okay. So, culturally comfortable, Islamically acceptable. This is what we need. Please remember it all the time. Okay? Would you remember what I said? What did I say? Islamically what? Islamically acceptable. Culturally comfortable. Malish, it's not a classroom, but can we say it together? Islamically
acceptable.
Culturally
Comfortable.
As parents, we do not want our children to be culturally uncomfortable because we are comfortable culturally with different things. This is selfishness. And this is short-sightedness. We want, if our children declare, I like my hamburger over my kofta, let them eat the hamburger. Don't try to convince them, but kofta has don't.
As long as it's halal.
We didn't get to that challenge yet, as long as it's absolutely. You know, there are two people who are talking to each other, and one of them is putting a hoodie on his head, and the other one is talking to him, and you know, but I want everybody to pay what? Attention. Okay, so are you looking at me? Let me see. The people with the hoodie, who's the... Yeah, mashallah. Now everybody is looking. Alhamdulillah. So now, the summary of what I talked about is this. We are now living in North America. We want to establish something as we are building. You know, I still remember what Brother Hisham was doing when, how many years back when we renovated? 3 years back or?
Yeah, almost
4 years.
6 years, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Now, he and Brother Naeem would talk about things that the rest of us did not understand. Okay? They were engineers, they were planning, they were this, they were that. So now, I don't know about you. I honestly, if I want to remember how the place looked 6 years back, I have to really now work on my memory and say, oh, because now I'm seeing this and I'm comfortable with this. There were people who argued, even, Hisham, if you remember, about the color of the carpet, right? About the quality of the carpet, right? Is there anybody who's talking about this now? No, because we became comfortable with the carpet. We became comfortable with the... so many people talked about what color shall we paint this wall with. But now, who is talking about that? Nobody. So what I am sending as a message to my sisters and brothers who are, you know, parents, is that we really need now to continue with those practices from our culture we are comfortable with that are in line with the Islamic teachings, acceptable Islamic teachings, based. How do we define acceptable? We already said that. We will ask a source. Say, this is Islamically feasible. So my cultural practice, okay, is in line with my teachings of Islam. So I will continue to have henna before the night of the... so because Islamically nobody will say, you know, having those patterns on the bride and on the bridesmaids and... Oh, wait a minute! Did I say bridesmaids? Yes, I did. I need to ask somebody, because we heard the word bridesmaids in association with other weddings of other faith traditions. Now, is having bridesmaids acceptable Islamically or not? Now, somebody will lead us to say, wait a minute, it's not the bridesmaids that really matter. It's how they are dressed and how they enter the room, or whether they should be in the front or just to give support to the bride in a certain cultural way that is Islamically acceptable. So it is not the television that is haram, it's what we may watch on television that is haram. So now culture, the summary is, and I wrote it here and I want to read it. Okay, yes, what is the rule? Islamic practices or beliefs that are rooted in Quran and Sunnah as interpreted by scholars. So we go to the scholar who assures us that she or he... You're talking about scholars, why did you say she or he? I said that on purpose. Because one of the ideas, wait a minute now, and we'll talk about that. Okay, if I say, woman scholar, I didn't say that a woman is leading salat for men. Now, is this cultural? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because in certain cultures where now feminism is something good and glorified, and our girls are exposed to it, our women are exposed to it. So now how do I discuss this with the ladies of our community? I do not look at them and say, you know, your feminism is detrimental. No, no, no. Start at a different level. Say there's a rule. There's a rule. You know, there's Islamic belief where we really need to ask the scholars who tell us whether it is acceptable for a woman to lead salat or whether it is acceptable for women to pray, you know, maybe side by side. There are certain masajid where women pray on one side, men pray on the other side. This needs to ask a source of Islamic belief who depends on Quran and Sunnah, who will tell us this cultural practice is not in line with Islam, then we stop doing it. If we are really, truly believe that we want to stand up for our Islamic identity. So if someone comes to us and say this is not in line, then we stop doing it. If it is in line, then we do it. And guess what? If at a certain masjid they did the exercise of asking a source of knowledge who depended on another source of knowledge, and then came and told them there's absolutely nothing wrong based on what we know that would prevent, if there is some kind of a barrier for women to pray on one side, you know what? We do not go and tell them, you are going to Jahannam. Guess what is happening right now? There are people who tell Muslims, you're going to Jahannam because you're doing this. No, it's about time that we stop teaching our children. You know, many of, I won't mention the word, our children we start to teach them about Islam, first thing we tell them is Jahannam. Right?
We scared them from fire.
That's the first thing. And you know what? At age 11, and some of you heard the story from me before, what happened to me? You know, I was thrown off completely for 6 years until I became 17. I was terrified of Islam because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed that something, you know, inshallah good happen or came out of it. Someone came and wanted to really teach me about Islam, and we sat at the masjid and there was a circle of about 5 of us. I was 11 years of age. Within a month, he said, you know, if you don't pray on time, when you die, your grave will squeeze your ribs. And then there will be, you know, a bald monster coming to you. Bald monster, you know. I'm not talking about Halloween, okay? Halloween.
It's another big topic.
It's another big topic. Is it? It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for parents. Shall we allow our children to have an innocent outing, to collect candy? How shall we answer them? Flee. I knew that. Okay. So let me. I will finish by giving my advice on this as a practical example. Okay. But let me. You know what? I didn't finish maybe 1/4 of what I. So we may continue. It doesn't mean that okay we are allowed only one on culture, and let us give the time and try to really help ourselves. Okay. So basically now in summary. Islam does not say separate your culture from it. It's impossible. Otherwise, if we separate it, then we will just come and live at the masjid. We can't do that. And that's why Islam is a way of life. Islam is built on two levels of diversity. Interpretational for the scholars whom we should run to seek. Don't depend on your interpretation. You need scholars to help us to understand. And then we stick by what they say. Not, wait a minute, I'm sorry if that may be misunderstood. When I say stick, it doesn't mean, because I did say to have that flexibility to accept some other Muslim who is going to do, things differently than the way, who's walking into the room. No, I'm not, have a seat, sir. Okay, I have with this young gentleman, relatively young, lengthy thoughts. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Okay, he's a person who really thinks, refers to sources, is coming with ideas that really are enriching how we should look at our Islam, without just say, but Ibn Taymiyyah said that. Ibn Taymiyyah lived more than 1,000 years back. Okay? And I'm not discrediting Ibn Taymiyyah. I'm saying I want my scholars, who I go back to, I refer to scholars. And then, I should, one of the challenges that we'll talk about, inshallah, is how to enjoy differences among each other. We should enjoy it, not condemn it. We shouldn't condemn differences. Okay? And then let's try to see, okay, I'm doing this. Does my understanding of Islamic beliefs, or do Islamic beliefs accept this? If no, I stop doing that in my culture. If yes, enjoy it. Enjoy it. If your children come to you, and that's the last thing before I talk about Halloween, okay, if your children come to you with, why can't I go out for Halloween? Just go back. If you cannot find the answer, ask a source. But don't shut your children and say, because I said so. What a terrible answer. Don't ever say that. But may Allah bless the soul of my father, who said it all the time to us, because I said so. But it worked in his generation, but it's not going to work in our generation. It shouldn't work in our generation. Let our, I love you so much. My great grand niece. Look how she's looking. Give me a hug. Come and give me a hug. Come and give me a hug. Come and give me a hug.
Oh, nice. Mashallah.
You love me. See jealousy, her grandfather. So basically, it is how to maneuver. Let the children develop a Canadian Islamic culture. And I said there's no such thing as Islamic culture. But when I put Canadian Islamic culture, I am, London, Ontario Islamic culture, which is different than Toronto. Let us help them. They need help. They did not grow in an environment similar to the one that we grew in. When I was growing in Beirut, Lebanon, there was no such thing as going door to door and collecting candy. Okay? Now, yes, if you will go back and analyze the history of the Devil's Night that precedes Halloween, and understand how the whole practice originated, you will start to shiver. And many things started innocently, started with the wrong base or on the wrong foot, but with time it became commercialized because the capitalist way of life is based on, analyze a year, 12 months. You will go from one season to another. So you will see Walmart, putting the merchandise for the summer. Then it goes into Halloween. Then it goes into Christmas. Then it goes into St. Patrick's. Then it goes into Valentine's. Then it goes into... this is how they, build it. And kids, by the way, don't tell me. They will not say, Mama, Baba, look, we have a neighbor who put monsters and, things in their front yard to, they just want to show that Halloween is fun, okay? And kids, they like it. And then when they see the ornaments and the lights and things for Christmas, they love it. When they see fireworks, they say, on Canada Day, on Victoria Day, on, please, can we go and watch it? No, we're not going to. You know what? Go on Canada Day and I would say it's a must. It's part of our Islamic culture to celebrate Canada Day. Let everybody hear this. It's a must. Honestly, and please, I want everyone to participate. How many of us know the words of O Canada? Honestly, don't. If you don't raise your hand. How many? Okay. You know something? Many of us tell our children that no, because there's music in O Canada, you are not supposed to listen to it. You just close your ears at the beginning of this. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. You know what? Victoria Day. Yes. You know what? If you don't want to cook halal turkey on Thanksgiving, don't condemn people who do.
We love that dinner.
Brother Tariq, where are you? I was wondering why you're putting so much weight. So let's go again back. So I'm not running away from Halloween. The way I would handle it, and if you noticed, I don't know, people who have been in Canada for some time, you must have noticed that the wave of kids coming and knocking at that door is dwindling. Because there are people now who discovered that Halloween is not all fun and candy. Just check the news the morning of the 31st of October and see what happened in Detroit, or in Philadelphia, or in any of those where the destruction, and it's called the Devil's Night, where the devil, where Satan is glorified, where those, ghoulish images are propagated because of the glorification of Satan. So my answer, okay, first of all, you have to tell your kids that consumption of candy in big quantities is disgusting. That it is not right. You shouldn't let your kids just say because it's really sweet and they love it. As parents, you have to allow your kids to enjoy candy, but you help them to really... There are parents, and I'm against that, please listen to this, who have deprived their children of candy. Their kids don't know what's the taste of candy. Okay, and by the way, parents, please realize there are certain kinds of candy that are chemicals. They are terrible for the health of your children. You know those things that come on a strand, what do you call them? Not jelly beans. Jelly beans are terrible because they have animal fat in them, but they are like little things on a ring. That's poison. That's poison, okay? So basically, let your kids enjoy your participation in giving them candy, but you don't have to tell them, let's go and collect it, because tell them that this is a glorification of something we don't want to glorify. Sit with your children and give them the alternative on another day. Wallahi, and I say wallahi, your children will stop asking you. Will stop asking. And if you don't allow your children to go and collect it, don't give it. Because they will say, why are you giving it to them? Not for us. Do it on another day. So this is one example where you take something cultural, you just cast it on, Islamic teachings. So let us now repeat the two words that summarize everything. So everything we do in Islam as a way of life should be Islamically acceptable and culturally. I repeated that because I want you to hear it, because we will discuss it later. Okay, because our way of life, we should have everything we do Islamically, religiously acceptable, but should be culturally comfortable. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you for being wonderful. But one thing I noticed, that we didn't bring 5 more families with us like we said we will do last time.